It's appropriate that I'm conducting this interview on the 4th of July because when this gentleman plays, fireworks tend to happen. So, CirdecSongs would like to welcome keyboardist extraordinaire, among other things, Mr. Jordan Rudess, best known for his work with Dream Theater and Liquid Tension Experiment.
Oh, doing pretty well. Thank you. Everything is fine.
Yeah. Excellent. And happy 4th of July to you. Outstanding. We are coming out of it as best we can, the 2-year absence of live music, with COVID and what have you. How have you been handling that?
Well, I did pretty well from a creative point of view during the whole period of time. One thing that I decided to do during the lockdown and the COVID break from live music is start a Patreon. And Patreon is functioning really well for me. It allowed me to really share, all my playing, piano playing, synthesizer playing, and get it out there and do the creative stuff that I wanted to do, and also allow people to have a chance to give back a little bit. It actually started out the whole lockdown started out with me actually doing very simple live streams, just using my phone, putting it down on the piano, playing.
Right.
For free, just letting the music out of my mind and just sharing it. That was really nice because I have such an international audience. People around the world would tune in, and I'd hear how grateful they were for everything, and it was awesome. But somewhere along the line, after doing about 50 of those in a row or so, I was like, well, I love playing, and this is awesome, but I kind of feel like I'm sending the wrong message out there that music is free, which it shouldn't be, because a lot of artists and people that we know are, trying to make a living, and some are struggling, and here I am, like, playing for free. I kind of felt like, let me fix that. So I found Patreon. I felt like that was a great platform. And the other great thing about Patreon was that I was able to up my game a little bit. I started getting into some lighting, started to get into some other kinds of cameras and video mixers, and just, all in all, kind of raise the level of my output. So now when I do my live streaming, I'm really able to make it experience.
Nice. We can go to, if I recall correctly, patreon.com. Should we just put you into a search engine, or how would we find you?
Anybody who's interested, just go to my website. It's like the first thing you see, jordanrudess.com.
Okay, excellent. One other quick thing. When I talk to musicians, I myself am getting back out there, and I'm going to concerts and talking to musicians. They're telling me how weird it was to be stuck at home for so long when you're just used to being on the road.
Yeah.
How did you adjust to that?
Well, I was okay because I figured out a creative way to be home, and I really enjoyed it. And for me, it was very social. As crazy as it sounds, social media, I was connecting with people all over the world and a lot. So I kind of filled in that space, with that I would usually been out meeting people or whatever, playing in different countries and cities, with connecting with people online all over the world. And I'm grateful that I have an international audience, really, because that's what made it all possible.
Very cool. Speaking of connecting with audiences and getting out there, you are doing a solo tour. What's going on there? Tell us a story about that.
Yeah, I've done some shows already, but now tomorrow I'm actually heading out to do a whole bunch more around the U.S. It's very exciting. Got some great stuff to share with people. Basically, in an evening with Jordan Rudess at this point, there'll be piano playing. I'm premiering a brand new Dream Theater, pretty extensive instrumental medley that I put together with one of my proteges. His name is Aaron Boschbu, who is the conductor of Dream Theater's Breaking the Fourth Wall. We put our heads together and created this thing that goes into like different sections of the epics and all kinds of cool parts, and just flows. And it's like a substantial 15-minute piece, if you will. Also, for the first time, I'm playing some guitar in the concert. I have produced an album where there's a song on that album that I would really like to play on the guitar. I'm showing off a new technology, which is called Moises, like Moses, but with an I in it.
Mm-hmm.
So it allows me to do virtual duets. So I'm going to be demonstrating Moises as part of the concert and doing little duets like with Greg Lake and Elton John and Don Anderson, kind of showing kind of how you can use the software to do some magical stuff. And also playing some music from, some people don't know that I write and produce music for Universal Publishing, which does, for like licensing for TV and movies. And I'm going to be showing some of the new music that we have for that as well. So I'm playing some Geoshred, which is my iOS application. So I'll be rocking out on my iPad, doing some blues, and I'm bouncing around on the stage, doing some things. And if the spirit moves, I'll also do some singing. If the voice is good. If not, I'll continue playing the piano. But yeah, the last few shows I've sung a couple songs, so I'll definitely do that too. So it's a really nice night for me because I get to do all my things, and it seems to be a lot of fun for everybody else too.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And I do believe you'll be in Chicago on Friday, right, if memory serves, and I will see you there.
Okay.
That will be that will be fun. I love asking musicians this question because I've gotten a variety of answers. When did you know you'd made the right decision to become a professional musician?
Well, I started playing the piano when I was 7, and I never thought about any other choice ever since then. So it was never even a question. Even when times were not great in terms of not having any keyboards and not having any money, I still knew that this is all I was ever going to do. So I worked it out, and things kind of worked out. A lot of times people have backup plans or whatever, and they see how it goes, and they could fall into some other job. But me, I was just always very one-sided. Music is what I do, and there's nothing about it, ever. So you were committed from pretty much day one. That's
that is cool. How do you define the Jordan Rudess approach when it comes to making music?
Well, for me, music is is my language, my main language. It's the way that I communicate. It's my emotional outlet. So I'm always looking for the best way to translate what's in my spirit, my mind, body, and allowing it to come through in music. So my approach is to develop my own facility, mental, physical, to allow that transmission, if you will, to be as fluid as possible. So I just see music, and music it's a language, it's communication. So my life's work is working on allowing communication to be clear and smooth to come out of me.
I got you.
Form.
Excellent. You are regarded as one of our virtuosos within the realm of music, and you've also surrounded yourself with virtuosos. It's in some bands you've got that one great player and everybody's just kind of supporting him, but you are surrounded by great players. So how do you make your sound work within that context? How does the band kind of come together in a Dream Theater or a Dixie Dregs or a Liquid Tension experiment?
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm in a group. These groups have bass players, all virtuosos, all specializing in their area of expertise. But we're all very different. I mean, not only the instruments we play, but even our background and what we're trying to do, and somehow it merges into a group format, and it just becomes larger than any one person, which is in my world of playing keyboards and synthesizers. It's very much about all the different sounds, whether it's an orchestral sound or choirs or organ, piano, sound effects, spacey sound. So, kind of in my I bring into these groups my own planet, if you will. The one thing that is challenging for all musicians is how do you fit your instrument, sonically speaking, into the sound of the group. The Dream Theater challenge, of course, is that John Petrucci, who of course is one of the greatest guitar players on the planet, his sound is as big as a house. So where do you go with that? What do you do? So, that's been one of the things I've learned over the years, and him too, how we orchestrate what we do. He wants his guitar to be huge, but we also like having keyboards in there. So it's a question of how do we position things in the mix? Do I hold like some tight strings? Do I double his guitar with a sound that comes through in a cool way, like the infamous snarling pig sound? What kind of the organ sounds do we use that add quality and coolness to a sound that's already quite big? When does he lay out, or when does he play clean so something else can fill sonic space? These are big things that over the years we learned more and more about. So, yeah.
Makes sense. I like to talk to musicians about chemistry. We always discuss how important chemistry is. You came to Dream Theater by way of Liquid Tension Experiment.
Right.
So what was it that caused you to bond with John and Mike at the time?
When I first heard Dream Theater, right before they asked me to join the group, when I first heard Dream Theater, my first thought was, guys are really virtuosos. They can really play. And I was interested. I'd never heard rock musicians play that fast and clean and tight. What's going on here? Amazing. So that really impressed me. And then the virtuosic side. And they also had a little bit of this metal thing, which that wasn't really a big thing for me, but the progressive side. It was the virtuosity, the progressive side, and the mix with the metal. It's like, wow, something going on here. So when I finally got a chance to work with John and Mike, we got along instantly. Even when I first auditioned for Dream Theater, whatever year that was, 94 or something like that, and didn't take the job. I mean, we knew we all got along. There was no question about it. It's a lot of common ground, common values, interested in meters, interested in playing tight and clean, and, stylistically, a lot of common stuff as well. But the Liquid Tension thing gave me the opportunity to really understand where these people were coming from, to see if we could work together and how we got along. So, we're all from New York, and kind of like had an instant bond on that level, and that was cool. And Tony Levin, of course, with Liquid Tension, was a great guy, and so all of a sudden there was this amazing soup we were making with everybody's input, everybody's stuff, which was cool. When I got to Dream Theater, after Liquid Tension, I had to kind of realize that Dream Theater was an established entity, so it wasn't going to be so much of a soup where everybody's just putting in whatever they want. It has to be kind of true to the brand of Dream Theater. So there's some learning there. Right. But chemistry-wise, we still, we always worked together really well. And I was hired by Dream Theater kind of because of not only my keyboard ability, but because of my composition ability, that I could help them write music and, add something at that level. So, it's been 23 years, so I guess chemistry is decent.
It's scary to think it's been that long. Time moves too quickly. And swinging back around to Liquid Tension, because I was got to mention Tony. It's not just Tony's sound. I mean, the low end is always amazing, but then he breaks out the stick. Right. So John's playing his guitar all over the place. Tony's playing his stick all over the place, and now you've got to find some room in there. Was that ever a struggle, or were you able to kind of just put it in nicely?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, there's always something to think about, because guitar sound is a lot of times very large. And the keyboard sounds can be very large too, for that matter. We always have to think about it a little bit, like how we do this.
Understood. I'm not going to make you pick your favorite child, which is to say pick your favorite songs or anything, but are there any moments that really stick out for you as a musician, some of your favorite memories?
Within Dream Theater, or?
You can start with Dream Theater or go wherever you like.
Like songs, concerts, or...
Sure. It's like I said, open-ended. Just pick anything you like.
Okay. So, when I look at the Dream Theater catalog, we have so much music, so many things. Each one is my child, because we're a group that puts so much care and effort into everything. But, I was really, when I look back, I was really pleased with what would be at the time the second disc, 6 Degrees of Turbulence. was very like
Right.
keyboard driven stuff, and really really doing that. Or an album like Octavarium. There was also more. I tend to lean towards the more proggy side than the metal side things.
Understood.
So yeah, I mean that album and using like in those days using the Continuum, what was it, the lap steel, which I used on that album.
Right.
Those are some definite highlights. When I
Excellent. Excellent. What I learned recently that I did not know is how deep you are into software.
Yeah.
That was kind of surprising with me. Tell me a little bit how that came to be and what's been produced from there.
So, after I left Juilliard, when I was like 19, I discovered, I got really into synthesizers. So my passion for synthesizers and sound and turning dials while playing the keyboard kind of opened up a world for me. And I got involved actually in the early days there with Korg as a product specialist, and also Kurzweil. So that was part of my life, working with the companies and figure out how to interface with them and speak to them to get ideas that I had in my head, maybe into the instruments. That was more so with Kurzweil, where they were open to my thoughts. Korg at the time, I was more representing them and making sounds for them. But when it came time about 13 years ago or something like that, when the first iOS, phone, the iPhone came out, I got my hands on a preliminary, phone, and I was just kind of moving my hand on the screen, thinking, wow, this is like really cool. It would be some amazing things you could do like with each finger on this glass surface. So it kind of got the juices flowing in my mind. And I reached out to a guy who I saw doing some basic programming. In those days, there was nothing that sounded good or really looked good on the phone. It was just all pretty preliminary. But I contacted this guy that I thought was obviously a good programmer. And I told him about my vision of making an instrument where you could play kind of vertical notes on a vertical line and express the sound and change the timbre with the throw of your finger. Maybe change the visual as well. And I also had this thought in my head that every finger kind of could be independent, like, unlike a keyboard where you press a chord and then you move the pitch wheel and everything changes. Wow, I could put two fingers down and one could go this way, one could go that way, one could slide up and one could slide down because of this kind of interface. So we built an application called MorphWiz. It took about a year once I met the right programmer. And so I expressed my ideas, and we worked together basically every day until this application came out. And then luckily for me, the application won. In those years, they had a Billboard award, Best Music App. So it won the Billboard Music App Award, which was awesome because not only was it flattering, but it also opened up the possibilities of me staying in this particular area. And people, even though over the years, like big companies have come into it, like all the big companies are in the app space. Who's not? But I still got a lot of notoriety at the beginning and a lot of experience working in apps, and so it enabled me to continue that through the years. So I've made a lot of apps. Wisdom Music, Wisdom with a Z, is the company that I founded that put out MorphWiz and put out SampleWiz, and also more recently put out Geoshred, which is a big platform app that I have out there. But yeah, I mean, I'm totally like into it, and I work with different companies. This last year, I worked with a couple of French companies. I did an application called Polywave with a company called Finger Lab, and I did this really cool new version of SampleWiz, Bliss SampleWiz 2. It's really rocking, and so I worked with the Bliss company from France on that. And I got a couple of things in the works, just kind of always keeping things going. I also, this last year, worked on my first music visualizer with a guy named Marvin Kruger. It's called Rhythm, like rhythm, but with a V. And it's awesome because it's like, you remember kind of like the old days, like the Windows music visualizer, things like that. Right. It's got the basic visualizer concept, but it's totally programmable. and controllable. So the idea is you can assign parameters to be controlled in real time through MIDI sliders. And for anybody doing any kind of like music visuals, it's a great tool because it does really, really cool stuff. So I'm passionate about all these things. So I have my various relationships with people who know how to code, and I can come up with the ideas and kind of guide the vision of the things and get it out to the real world. And, definitely a big part of what I do.
That is really cool. You've got a lot going on in that mind. That's just remarkable. Because I was going to ask you about the Geoshred. I looked at a couple of videos, and that's really cool stuff that you're doing there.
Geoshred, Geoshred. Geoshred is probably my biggest app. It's sold hundreds of thousands of copies for iOS. One of these days we'll have it on desktop as well. But Geoshred is really pretty awesome. Basically, the short story is I partnered with some guys that I met out of Stanford University in California. One of the guys, his name is Julius Smith, was the developer or inventor, I should say, of physical modeling. Physical modeling is a technology that's used to make sound, much like you have sampling, or you have subtractive synthesis, or granular synthesis, or additives. All these different ways to make sound. Physical modeling is its own way to make sound, where they kind of model. They figure out using calculations, numbers, things like how big is the violin you're modeling? What's the size of it? What's the resonant body? How long are the strings? How thick are they? You have kind of a calculation, and you input that in the computer. Then you can make your sound that way, and it's really pretty cool. So set up a partnership with some great guys out of Italy called Audio Modeling after we first released Geoshred. And the audio modeling partnership has been amazing because they have a technology called SWAM, SWAM, and they have some of the most realistic sounds you've ever heard, like beautiful cello and trumpet and trombone and saxophone and clarinet and oboe. Great sounding instruments. Matter of fact, with Dream Theater, every night of our tour, during our epic song of You from the Top of the World, I play the cello solo. That's in that when the song breaks down and it's only for she and I play that cello solo on my iPad. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So Geoshred is a very powerful tool. And I'll tell you that because of the pitch intelligence, all the cool ways you can slide control of your pitch, it's a very big hit in India, where they have the whole Carnatic music thing, and they do a lot of intelligent kind of pitch bending. So Geoshred is a favorite there, and it's sold many, many copies to a lot of musicians who are now, instead of buying like sitars or whatever, they're getting Geoshred, and they're very not quite as expensive as walking in.
That is cool. That is really cool. Inquiring minds want to know, as much as we're looking forward to seeing you as a solo act, where are we in terms of Dream Theater? Is there anything else in the works that you can talk about?
Dream Theater is actually going to be going off Indonesia and then Japan in kind of like early, mid-August. We have a couple shows happening there. Matter of fact, I'm flying directly from Fort Lauderdale to Indonesia. I leave on the 7th. My last show in Fort Lauderdale is the 6th. So we'll do that. And then in September, we have some shows in South America. And then there should be a little break, a little bit of time, when I'll probably dive into my next solo album project. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. Okay, now we've come to the part of the show. I'm going to let you go on this. A little thing I like to call my favorites, where I speak to people who play a particular instrument. In your case, I'm going to stick to keyboards, all due respect to the guitar work and what have you. And I like to ask my favorite keyboardists who their favorite keyboardists are.
So, probably the biggest influence in my rock keyboard playing was Keith Emerson. I think he had, well, first of all, Tarkus. The album Tarkus blew my mind. That was pivotal in my life. It came to me at a time when I didn't realize that keyboards have that kind of power. So remember a friend of mine brought over the vinyl. I kept spinning it. Thinking, what's going on here? How have that? I knew about the chords were great. Like, well, Keith Emerson used a lot of what we call suspended chords, like not major, not minor, but he's been kind of chords built on intervals of a fourth and different things. And they had a very kind of strong sound, which I heard of other music along those lines using fourths and stuff, suspended chords. But I'd never heard anything that had that kind of strength and power, like harnessing almost like the, classical sensibilities, but putting it into a rock energy. That was amazing.
Right.
And he had a very good technique and an unusual technique on the keyboard as well, doing things that were new to me. And also, so he was a big influence. And also Rick Wakeman, of course, was a big influence too. Specifically, albums like Six Wives of Henry VIII, where it was a combination of classical music and rock that I hadn't heard before, and I was really inspired by that. Him using mellotrons and stuff like that were awesome.
Right.
And then another big influence was Patrick Moraz, because he did an album with a group called Refugee, which I guess was members of the Nice after Keith Emerson left and Patrick. And Refugee was cool because, well, Patrick was great with bending pitch in his mini moog. He was an excellent lead player, and there was a song called Someday on that Refugee album. And it was just so cool, like just the way that he would bend the notes. And you always talk, like in the guitar world, you talk about artists like B.B. King, whatever, that bend the note and hold it. Just about the way that happened. With Patrick, it was the way that happened too. And he would use the pitch wheel and he would bend it, and it would be maybe he would go a little bit beyond the pitch, a little sharp or flat, but on purpose. And he would do it the way nobody else really, does it.
You don't think a lot about vibrato when you talk about keyboard players, because I know what you mean with B.B. King, where it's just basically, we're working the fretboard with the finger. That's interesting to do.
Yeah. Well, keyboard players, that is something that is a worthy thing to think about as a keyboard player, because you don't want to ignore vibrato when you're playing lead. It's really important. Like, I spend a lot of time over the years really working on my vibrato. But the problem with keyboard players is that there's this thing called a mod wheel. There's usually, like, if you have wheels in the synthesizer, there's usually two. One does pitch and one does mod. Well, a lot of keyboard players, this is a tip to keyboard players here, a lot of players will bend the pitch with the pitch wheel, and then they'll take their other hand when it's time to do vibrato and push up the mod wheel, and he goes, ah. But it's whatever speed that is programmed and whatever depth of pitch wobble, if you will, that is programmed. So you're always, every time you do it, it's going to be the same thing. So let's think about it. What makes a great guitar player like Jeff Beck or John Petrucci or Steve Morse or Steve Vai or whatever? It's how they bend the pitch, and then how deep is the vibrato, right? How fast is the vibrato? All these things are what kind of makes one player different than another. Like Steve Morse had a fast, thinner vibrato. It was very cool, very Steve Morse. John Petrucci will have a wider, a little bit slower vibrato, more in the rock vein. Somebody like Brandon Ellis, who's a great guitar player from totally spacing out, but anyway, he does like the really, really wide and slow, very cool. Black Dahlia.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he's a great player. He does this really wide, almost, and he does vibrato. He's doing like a whole step. Anyway, getting back to the keyboard. So my point is, hey, keyboardists out there, like, think about doing the vibrato with the actual pitch lever, because that's where you're going to get the most personal expression, right? Don't change the pitch and then just go over to the mod wheel or move the joystick and then just use the joystick for vibrato. Do it yourself so you can have some control over it and you make your own individual voice.
Excellent. You heard it here first, keyboardist. Make sure you pay attention. Absolutely. Jordan, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to us today, or talk to me, and ultimately be us. We'll look up your Patreon. We'll buy tickets for your solo shows. We can't wait to see Dream Theater, and I hope you have a great holiday.
Thanks.
I really appreciate the time, and we will see you soon.
Thanks for having me on your show. Okay.
Take care.